So this post popped up in my feed last week and it stuck with me. One, because it's connected to some of the ideas I've been thinking about and talking about for the last 2, 3 years. Two is because some of these things are coming up more frequently in conversations I've been having with the people that I work with. And three, it sparked a couple of new questions for me, which is always the sign of a good post. It made me think. And it was written by David Pand, who's the CTO of Cursor, well-known vibe coding platform, I think recently acquired by SpaceX. And what David's talking about in his post is this new AI capability. I'll call it a capability called agent loops. Pretty sure, almost guaranteed that it's going to be permeating and filling our LinkedIn and YouTube feeds over the coming days, weeks, months. But the real point that David is making here is that these new capabilities come along. And 2.5 years ago, it was prompt engineering, as we'll remember. Then it was vibe coding. Now it's agent loops. And initially, it might feel technical, complex. But what we've seen happen through the previous waves of prompt engineering and vibe coding, and I believe will happen with agent loops, and I think what David's getting at, is that the initial complexity of it will sort of recede to the background. It'll get obfuscated away. Um, and it will become accessible and available for more and more of us. I think back to prompt engineering 2.5 years ago. We were all like sitting around and talking about, do we have to become prompt engineers? We were like basically, hand writing, hand typing these increasingly sophisticated prompts. Um, and people were thinking about, do I have to become a prompt engineer? Companies were putting out job postings for prompt engineers. Today, nobody's really talking about becoming a prompt engineer. Those job postings, I don't see them around anymore. I haven't written a prompt or typed a prompt in 18 months. Why? Because the AI tools themselves are evolving so quickly that over time and pretty quickly, that initial complexity is receding to the background, and we're simply able to ask these LLMs write the prompt. Same thing happened with vibe coding 3 years ago when I was using tools like Replit. As somebody who's never written a line of code, it was interesting to use, but I couldn't create anything valuable for myself or for others. But what's happened over the last 6, 12 months, tools like Claude Code, Codex, it's obfuscated that complexity. So someone like me can now speak and vibe code an application into existence, or a microsite or a landing page or a full website. And that leads me to think about a couple of things. One, this is not like other technologies. A lot of people are still saying, yeah, we've seen like other like technology revolutions. This will sort of play out the same way. It's not. This is an alien species technology. It is evolving at an incredibly rapid rate. And because of the nature of this technology, it's also consuming that complexity, making it easier for us to use these capabilities, for more of us to do it, use these capabilities, which I'll get to a point I'll talk about a little bit in a couple of minutes here. So it's an alien species technology. The complexity is getting quickly obfuscated away. It's sort of like oxygen. So evolving at a rapid rate, it's making it easier and easier for more of us to access these capabilities, to use them. I've talked a lot about I think what AI is doing in terms of like one of these tectonic shifts, like that's happening underneath the surface, is that it's moving us into this hyper cycle of innovation and commoditization, innovation and commoditization. And I think AI itself and how these tools are evolving is an example of that. So what I mean by that is that like these new innovations come along, prompt engineering, vibe coding, agent loops, and there'll be the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. But then they almost commoditize themselves by making it easier and easier for more of us to use it. So for a split second, being really good at prompt engineering was an advantage for those that invested the time to become really good prompt engineers. But then the complexity gets obfuscated away. So more of us are able to be really good prompt engineers. Same thing with vibe coding. Same thing will happen with agent loops. Same thing will happen with the next thing. And I think this is a reflection of what's going to happen more broadly to the way we need to think about our jobs, our teams, our organizations, is that we're moving into this period of being able to leverage and apply these AI tools. But one of the implications is going to be that we're going to probably have to be in a more continuous cycle of like innovate, commoditize, because these tools are going to be able to be used by more and more of us as individuals, teams, organizations. David points out, like the part of his post I've highlighted down below, and I'll read it. Like, the alpha isn't what you know, it's how fast you can learn it and how easily you can let it go. Um, and I think this goes to like a broader point of, I've been thinking more about like AQ. So we're all familiar with IQ, intelligence quotient, EQ, emotional quotient. AQ is something that the concept's been around for a while, but I think it's really going to come to the fore now. And AQ is adaptability quotient. And that's really what I think he's like getting at here, is like our ability to learn something and as to make it sort of part of our infrastructure. Like prompting should be part of our like cognitive infrastructure now, the way we think about like work and the way we do it. Same with vibe coding. And the same thing will happen with agent loops and again, whatever comes next. So our adaptability quotient as individuals, as leaders who are managing people, like to be on the lookout for like, what is Nish's adaptability quotient? I think that's something that's going to become increasingly important because there's going to be wave after wave of new capability. And what we really need to prioritize is something I do in the work I do, is like, and even the way I use AI, is mindset over mechanics. We have to understand these new capabilities, but we also have to understand like the job isn't to become like a expert necessarily at the capability to be able to do it ourselves, quote unquote, manually. It's to understand it in terms of what it enables, how it works, and how we need to leverage it as part of our execution engine, as part of how we leverage it to create new possibilities and new advantage. Because remember, we're moving into that innovate and commoditize hypercycle. I think we need to be thinking more about that, is like, how quickly can we learn something? How quickly can we let go of like our identity tied to, oh, I understand prompt engineering very well, but I can let it go now in terms of like my identity is not tied to that, my sense of value is not tied to that, because the complexity gets obfuscated away and more and more people can leverage that capability. And that's very different than thinking about our careers the way they've been up until now, because usually a career, what a role was about, like, I'm going to learn something and I'm going to like establish mastery in it. That took time and effort, and our identities were tied to that to a large extent. But if these new capabilities are going to be coming at us quickly, more and more quickly, because AI is this alien species technology, and the complexity of how to apply them is going to get obfuscated away, I think what David's talking about is key, is like our ability to learn something new, to then let it go so that we're then able to learn the next new thing that's very likely just around the corner. And so it's got me thinking about this notion of adaptability quotient and how we need to be thinking about this in terms of like the way we're approaching our own learning, our comfort with like what I think is now a period of much more frequent, perhaps perpetual change. For those that are leaders, what kind of environment are we creating where it's not just about IQ and wondering if that's as important anymore, if we're able to effectively use LLMs, EQ and AQ. I think we're going to be hearing about adaptability quotient much more moving forward. So that's what it's got me thinking about.